In times of uncertainty, when the world around us seems to be shifting and changing at a pace we cannot control, we must turn our hearts and minds to the one source that remains constant, God. You see, the key to navigating through these storms, these seasons of doubt and fear, is not found in our own strength or understanding. It is found in the guidance that comes from above. When life is uncertain, we are faced with choices, decisions that will impact not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us. And the truth is, we cannot afford to walk this path alone. We cannot lean on our own wisdom or on the opinions of others who too are uncertain about what lies ahead. No, we need divine direction. The Word of God teaches us that He is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. When we seek His guidance, we are opening ourselves to a wisdom that transcends human understanding, a wisdom that leads us in the right path, even when the road seems unclear. His guidance will always direct us toward peace, purpose, and progress. Now, true prayer is not simply asking for help in a crisis. It is a posture of humility and surrender. When we pray for God's guidance, we are acknowledging that His plan for our lives is greater than our own. We are recognizing that, though we cannot see the entire picture. He already knows the beginning from the end. And in that, we find security. Let me remind you today that uncertainty is not a sign of defeat. It is an invitation to trust. It is in these uncertain times that we can discover the depth of our dependence on God. When we pray, we invite His wisdom into our decisions, His peace into our hearts, and His presence into our circumstances. In the midst of confusion, we find clarity. In the midst of chaos, we find calm. But we must be patient. God's guidance doesn't always come in the way we expect. It may come as a whisper in the quiet of our hearts or through the counsel of a trusted friend. Sometimes it comes through a moment of stillness when we quiet and listen closely. What matters is that we are open to His voice, ready to move in the direction He leads, no matter how unfamiliar that path may seem. And as you wait for that guidance, know this: God is faithful. He will not leave you to navigate the storm alone. The Bible tells us that if any of us lacks wisdom, we should ask of God, who gives generously without reproach. So do not doubt. Ask with faith and trust that He will show you the way. As you pray for guidance, remember that God's plan for you is always good. He has a purpose for your life that is far beyond what you could ever imagine. And as you surrender to His will, He will direct your steps in a way that leads to peace, fulfillment, and success. You will not walk in uncertainty forever, because with God leading you, the path will become clear. So today I urge you, pray for God's guidance. Seek Him earnestly, listen attentively, and trust Him completely. In uncertain times, let His wisdom be your anchor, His peace your comfort, and His guidance your light. God has not brought you this far to leave you. You are not alone. Trust Him to lead you through, and know that the best is yet to come. In times of uncertainty, it is essential to acknowledge the constant guidance of God. Too often we rely on our own limited understanding or seek advice from the world around us, yet the truth remains that the ultimate source of wisdom, direction, and clarity comes from God alone. He is the one who knows the end from the beginning, the one who sees what we cannot see and understands what we cannot comprehend. This is why, when faced with uncertainty, we must first look to Him, for His guidance is unwavering, steady, and perfect. God's guidance is not contingent upon our circumstances. It is not subject to the winds of the world or the chaos that often surrounds us. His wisdom remains constant, even when everything around us is in turmoil. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. While the world changes, God's direction is steadfast and reliable. When we face moments of doubt, His guidance is the anchor that keeps us grounded when we are unsure of our next step. It is His light that illuminates the path before us. However, acknowledging this guidance requires something from us. It requires that we humble ourselves and recognize that our understanding is limited, that we do not possess all the answers and cannot control every outcome. In our human frailty, we often try to figure things out on our own, using our intellect, our experience, or the advice of others. While these things are not inherently bad, they are incomplete. When we lean solely on our own wisdom, we are often left searching for something more, something deeper. This is where God's guidance fills the gap. When we acknowledge God's constant presence and his desire to guide us, we step into a place of trust. Trust is foundational to our relationship with God. Trusting that he knows what is best for us, even when we can't see the full picture, is an act of faith. It is through this trust that we begin to understand that his ways are higher than our ways, his thoughts higher than our thoughts. God's guidance doesn't always come in the way we expect or desire, but it is always what we need. Sometimes his guidance may take us on a path that seems unfamiliar or uncomfortable, but we must remember that his path leads to life, peace, and purpose. The Bible assures us in Proverbs that if we acknowledge God in all our ways, he will direct our paths. This acknowledgement is more than just an acknowledgement of his existence. It is an active recognition of his sovereignty in every area of our lives. It is surrendering our plans, our desires, and our fears to him, trusting that he will guide us in the best direction, even if that direction looks different from what we had envisioned. In doing so, we invite him into our decision-making, allowing his wisdom to shape our choices. When we actively seek God's guidance, we are opening ourselves up to divine wisdom that transcends human understanding. This wisdom does not always come in the form of a loud voice or a dramatic revelation. Sometimes it comes in a quiet whisper, in a sense of peace that surpasses understanding, or in the stillness of our hearts as we wait on God. It is in these moments of surrender that God speaks the clearest, for it is in stillness that we are most able to hear him. The busyness of life can often drown out his voice, but when we take time to pause, to pray, and to listen, his guidance becomes more evident. God's constant guidance is also a reminder that we are never alone in our journey. In times of uncertainty, it can feel as though we are walking through the unknown with no one to turn to, but we must remember that God is always with us. He has promised that he will never leave us nor forsake us. His presence is a constant, even when we feel lost or uncertain. His guidance is a manifestation of that presence, leading us through the fog of doubt and confusion to a place of clarity and peace. When we acknowledge God as our guide, we invite his wisdom into our lives, and with his wisdom comes peace. Peace in knowing that we are not relying on our own understanding, but on a higher source of wisdom. Peace in knowing that God's plans for us are good, and that even in the midst of uncertainty, he is working all things together for our good. This peace, which transcends all understanding, guards our hearts and minds, allowing us to navigate life's challenges with confidence, knowing that God is directing our steps. As we seek God's guidance, let us remember that he is not only present in the calm, but also in the storm. His wisdom will guide us through every season, whether we are standing on solid ground or walking through uncharted waters. By acknowledging God as our guide, we place our trust in the one who knows what is best for us. And in doing so, we find the peace, clarity, and direction we so desperately need. Prayer, true prayer, is far more than simply a request for help in times of trouble. It is a deep, heartfelt posture of humility and surrender before dins. When we start of all the answers, prayer becomes bridge between our limited understanding and the divine wisdom of God. But it is not just about asking for guidance. Prayer is about aligning our hearts with God's will, acknowledging that he knows what is best, even when we don't fully understand it. When we approach prayer in this way, we are declaring that we do not have all the answers. It is an acknowledgement that we are not in control and that we do not possess the wisdom needed to navigate every challenge we face. Prayer becomes an invitation to God to step in and lead us. But this invitation requires a surrender on our part. We cannot truly invite God to guide us if we are unwilling to let go of our own plans and desires. This is where true humility comes into play. Humility in prayer is not about degrading ourselves or belittling our worth. It is about recognizing our limitations and understanding that God's wisdom far exceeds our own. It is in this humility that we acknowledge our need for divine direction. When we humble ourselves before God, we are saying, Lord, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, but I trust that you do. This posture of surrender is where God can work most powerfully in our lives because it opens us up to his will, his timing, and his plans. In uncertain times, we often want quick answers or clear signs, but prayer requires patience. When we pray for guidance, we are also acknowledging that God's ways are not always our ways, and His timing is not always our timing. Prayer is not a vending machine where we make a request and receive an immediate response. Instead, prayer is a process that allows us to submit to God's wisdom, trust in His timing, and wait patiently for His direction. It is during this waiting period that our faith is tested and strengthened. It is in the stillness and silence that we often hear God most clearly. While waiting for an answer, we are also called to listen. Prayer is not just about speaking our concerns to God, it is about creating space to hear from Him. God often speaks in a still, small voice, and in order to hear that voice, we must quiet the noise around us and within us. In the busyness of life, we are often distracted, caught up in our worries and fears. But when we make the choice to slow down, to sit in His presence, and to listen for His guidance, we allow God to speak into our hearts. And it is in those quiet moments of prayer that He reveals His direction, often in ways we did not expect. Humility in prayer also means being open to God's answers, even when they do not align with our own desires. It requires a willingness to let go of our preconceived notions and submit to God's will. We may pray for guidance on a specific decision, and God may lead us down a path that we had never considered. At times, this can be difficult because we may want things to go a certain way. But true humility allows us to trust that God's plan is far better than anything we could have imagined. When we surrender our own desires and allow God to direct our steps, we experience a peace that surpasses all understanding, knowing that He is in control and that His plans are good. Another important aspect of humility in prayer is the recognition that we are not praying out of obligation, but out of relationship. Prayer is not a mere ritual or duty. It is the language of a child speaking to their Heavenly Father. It is an intimate conversation where we share our hearts, our fears, our dreams, and our desires. And just as a child trusts their parent to guide them, we must trust God as our loving Father, knowing that He desires what is best for us. This intimacy in prayer deepens our relationship with God, allowing us to grow in our trust and dependence on Him. It transforms our perspective, shifting our focus from our own understanding to God's greater plan. As we humble ourselves in prayer, we begin to see the world through His eyes, and our hearts align with His purpose for our lives. True humility in prayer is not a one-time act. It is a daily choice, a continuous posture of surrender. It is about consistently acknowledging that we need God's guidance, that we cannot navigate the uncertainties of life on our own. As we humble ourselves before God, we open the door for His wisdom to lead us, His peace to guard us, and His presence to comfort us. In uncertain times, prayer becomes the lifeline that connects us to God's guidance. It is in these moments of surrender that we experience the clarity and direction that only God can provide. As we humble ourselves in prayer, we make space for God to move in our lives, guiding us with wisdom, peace, and purpose. And in this, we find the strength and courage to face whatever lies ahead, knowing that we are not alone and that God's guidance will always lead us to where we need to be. Uncertainty is something we all face in life. Whether it's a career change, a relationship challenge, or a health crisis, moments of doubt and confusion can seem overwhelming. But it's important to understand that uncertainty is not a sign of defeat or a lack of control. In fact, it is often an invitation to trust, an invitation to place our faith in something greater than ourselves. When we face uncertainty, we are given the opportunity to move beyond our own understanding and lean into the wisdom and guidance that comes from God. This is the place where true trust begins. When uncertainty surrounds us, it's easy to become anxious, to try to figure things out on our own, or to rely on the opinions of others. We look for solutions in the external world, hoping that if we can just understand what is happening, we can regain a sense of control. But the truth is, no amount of human effort can provide us with the certainty we seek. The world is constantly shifting, and even our best laid plans can be disrupted in the blink of an eye. That's where God's guidance steps in. In times of uncertainty, we are called to release the need for control and trust that God has a plan for us, a plan that is greater than what we can see or understand. Trusting in God during uncertain times requires a shift in our mindset. Instead of focusing on the unknown, we must turn our attention to the one who holds the future in his hands. God is not surprised by the uncertainty we face. In fact, He allows it, knowing that it is in these moments that we can grow in our faith and dependence on Him. Uncertainty invites us to let go of our reliance on our own strength and wisdom and instead trust in His perfect timing, provision, and direction. In moments of uncertainty, God's voice becomes clearer when we choose to trust in His guidance. Trust is not simply acknowledging that God exists or that He has the power to help us. It is about believing that He will guide us in the right direction, even when we cannot see the full picture. Trusting God means understanding that He is faithful, that He has our best interest at heart, and that He will never leave us to navigate life's challenges alone. This trust is not based on what we can see or understand, but on who God is and the promises He has made to us. He has promised that He will never leave us nor forsake us. He has promised to lead us beside still waters and to guide us on paths of righteousness. When we trust God in the midst of uncertainty, we take a step out of the darkness and into His light. The unknown becomes less frightening when we know that God is with us every step of the way. The key is not to focus on the uncertainty itself, but to focus on the certainty of God's presence and His ability to lead us. He is not only the God of certainty, but the God who walks with us through every uncertain moment, guiding us with His wisdom, providing for our needs, and giving us peace in the midst of the storm. Trusting God also means surrendering our timelines. We may want answers now. We may feel a sense of urgency, wishing that the uncertainty would be resolved quickly. But God's timing is different from ours. His ways are higher than our ways, and His timing is always perfect. Trusting in God means that we are willing to wait for His direction, even when we don't have all the answers immediately. We may not always understand why certain events unfold the way they do, but we can trust that God is at work in the midst of it all. He is shaping our character, refining our faith, and preparing us for what is to come. In the process of trusting God through uncertainty, we also learn to release fear. Fear thrives in the unknown, in the moments when we don't know what will happen next. But faith thrives in trust. When we choose to trust God, fear loses its grip on us. It does not mean that the uncertainty will go away, but it means that we can face it with courage, knowing that God is in control. Fear is replaced with peace, the peace that comes from knowing that we are not alone, that God is with us, and that He will guide us through whatever challenges we face. Ultimately, uncertainty is not a place to fear, but a place to grow. It is in these moments that we can strengthen our trust in God, deepen our relationship with Him, and experience His faithfulness in ways we never could in times of certainty. Trusting God in the face of uncertainty is an act of faith that transforms us. It shapes us into people who rely not on our own understanding, but on the wisdom and guidance of a loving and faithful God. So when uncertainty comes knocking at your door, don't let it cause you to panic or retreat. Let it be a call to trust. Trust that God is with you. Trust that He is guiding you. And trust that He has a purpose in the midst of it all. As you place your trust in Him, you will find that uncertainty no longer has the power to shake you. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to experience the peace, purpose, and direction that come from trusting in God's perfect plan. When we seek God's guidance in uncertain times, we must remember that His wisdom transcends human understanding. There are many moments in life when our own knowledge or experiences fall short, when the decisions we face seem overwhelming or unclear. It is precisely in these moments that we are invited to turn to a higher source of wisdom, God. His wisdom is not limited by time, circumstances, or human perception. It is infinite, perfect, and capable of guiding us in ways we cannot always anticipate or comprehend. God's wisdom is different from the world's understanding. The world may offer us advice based on trends, popularity, or even logic, but God's wisdom is timeless. It does not change with the seasons or shift with the opinions of the masses. God's wisdom is rooted in eternal truth and is always relevant, regardless of the situation. When we find ourselves in a position where we do not know what to do, we can trust that God's guidance will lead us to the right course of action, even when everything around us seems uncertain. One of the unique aspects of God's wisdom is that it does not always align with what we think we need or want. Our human understanding is limited. We see only a small fraction of the bigger picture. But God, in His infinite wisdom, sees the entire landscape of our lives, past, present, and future. He knows what we need, what will grow us, and what will ultimately bring us peace, even when it doesn't make sense in the moment. This is where faith comes into play. When we seek God's wisdom, we are not only asking for practical advice or guidance, but for the ability to trust His understanding above our own. This requires us to surrender our own assumptions, desires, and plans, knowing that God's wisdom will lead us to what is truly best for us. In moments of uncertainty, we often want immediate answers, clear directions, and swift resolutions. However, God's wisdom may not always give us what we expect in the way we expect it. Sometimes, His guidance comes in the form of patience, teaching us to wait for His perfect timing. Other times, it might come as a nudge to go in a direction we hadn't considered. At times, His wisdom may seem contrary to what we believe is the best choice. But we must trust that His ways are higher than our ways and that His wisdom will never lead us astray. The Bible is filled with examples of people who sought God's wisdom in times of uncertainty. One of the clearest examples is King Solomon, who, when asked by God what he desired, chose wisdom over wealth or power. In 1 Kings 3, God granted Solomon wisdom beyond measure, and with it, he was able to make decisions that led to peace and prosperity for Israel. Solomon recognized that, despite his position of authority, he did not have the wisdom necessary to govern effectively on his own. In the same way, we must acknowledge our limitations and recognize that we cannot navigate life's challenges without God's wisdom. When we seek His wisdom, He will give us understanding that surpasses anything we could achieve on our own. God's wisdom is not only applicable in moments of major life decisions, but it is also present in the day-to-day choices we make. Every decision we face, no matter how small, can benefit from God's guidance. Seeking His wisdom in the little things helps us to align our lives with His will and prevents us from being led astray by the distractions of the world. When we invite God's wisdom into every area of our lives, our relationships, our work, our health, our finances, we create space for Him to direct us in ways that honor Him and bring peace to our hearts. The beauty of God's wisdom is that it is available to all who seek it. James 1:5 tells us, "If any of lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach." God does not withhold His wisdom from us. He desires to lead us, to show us the way, and to guide us through life's uncertainties. But we must be willing to ask, to seek, and to trust that He will answer. This requires a humble heart, one that is open to receiving God's direction, even when it challenges our preconceived notions or desires. As we seek God's wisdom, it is also important to remember that His guidance often comes through various channels. It might come through the still small voice within, through the counsel of wise mentors, through the scriptures, or through the circumstances of our lives. God's wisdom is not limited to one form. He speaks to us in a variety of ways. Therefore, we must remain open to how He might be guiding us and be willing to listen for His voice, even in the midst of the noise of daily life. God's wisdom is also accompanied by peace. When we receive His guidance, it brings a sense of calm assurance, even in the midst of uncertainty. We may not always understand the path ahead, but we can move forward with confidence, knowing that God's wisdom is leading us. His peace guards our hearts and minds, allowing us to make decisions without fear, anxiety, or confusion. This peace is a confirmation that we are walking in the right direction, even when the road ahead is unclear. In uncertain times, seeking God's wisdom is not just about finding answers. It is about aligning ourselves with His will and trusting that He will lead us where we need to go. His wisdom transcends human understanding and is the key to navigating life's challenges with grace, confidence, and peace. As we seek His guidance, let us remember that God's wisdom is always available to us liberally, generously, and without reproach. All we need to do is ask, trust, and follow. In uncertain times, one of the greatest challenges we face is waiting. We live in a world that is often driven by instant gratification, where answers and solutions are expected to come quickly. But God's guidance doesn't always operate on our timetable. There are times when He calls us to wait patiently, trusting that He is working behind the scenes even when we cannot see the full picture. Waiting is not passive. It is an active process that requires faith, perseverance, and trusting God's perfect timing. Patience is not always easy, especially when we are in the midst of uncertainty. We may find ourselves restless, anxious, and eager for answers. But it is in these moments that God's call to wait becomes an opportunity to grow. Patience in waiting teaches us to relinquish control and trust that God knows what is best for us. It reminds us that we are not in charge of the outcome. He is. In times of waiting, we learn to let go of our own plans and desires and allow God to direct our steps. Waiting for God's guidance can feel like an uncomfortable process. We may not know when the answers will come or what the next step will look like. The temptation to act out of fear or frustration can be strong, but we must remember that impatience only leads to more confusion and can prevent us from receiving God's best for us. Waiting is an act of trust. It is the belief that God is at work, even when we cannot see the results immediately. When we wait on Him, we are acknowledging that He is in control, that His timing is perfect, and that He will not leave us to navigate the uncertainties of life alone. There are several lessons we can learn in the waiting. First, waiting cultivates dependence on God. When we are in a position of waiting, we realize that we cannot do it on our own. We come to the end of our own resources, and it is then that we must turn to God. Our patience grows as we wait on Him, and through this waiting, we develop a deeper reliance on His wisdom, timing, and provision. The waiting period is a time of refining. God uses these moments to shape our character, to strengthen our faith, and to prepare us for what He has in store. Second, waiting allows us to grow in trust. Trust is often built over time, and it is in waiting that we see God's faithfulness to us. We may not have all the answers now, but as we reflect on the times in our past when God has led us, provided for us, and guided us, we are reminded of His unchanging nature. He is faithful, and His timing is perfect. The more we experience His faithfulness, the more we can trust Him in the present moment. Waiting also brings us closer to God. In the rush of life, it's easy to get caught up in our own plans and ambitions. But in the stillness of waiting, we are invited to draw near to God in a deeper way. Waiting is an opportunity to spend time in prayer, in worship, and in the Word, strengthening our relationship with God. It is in the quiet moments of waiting that we can hear His voice more clearly, discern His guidance, and align ourselves more fully with His will. During times of uncertainty, God is not distant. He is with us, drawing us closer to Himself and inviting us into a deeper relationship. Moreover, waiting helps us to develop endurance. Life is filled with seasons of waiting, and how we respond to these seasons shapes our ability to endure future challenges. Just as a runner builds endurance through training, we build spiritual endurance through waiting. It is in waiting that we learn perseverance, that we strengthen our resolve to trust God even when the answers seem far off. And when we come through a season of waiting, we emerge stronger, more confident in God's ability to lead us, and better equipped to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Another aspect of waiting is that it helps to align our hearts with God's will. Often when we feel uncertain, we want immediate answers because we are driven by our own desires, plans, and timelines. But as we wait, we are given the space to let go of our own agendas and open our hearts to God's direction. Waiting allows us to let go of our will and surrender to His. In the process, we often find that God's plans are far better and that the things we thought we needed or wanted were not in alignment with His purpose for us. Through waiting, we learn to desire what God desires, and in this we find peace and fulfillment. Waiting does not mean that we are inactive. During the waiting period, God may not yet reveal the next step, but He is still working in us and through us. Waiting is a time of preparation, a time to grow in patience, deepen our faith, and develop the character that will enable us to handle what God has prepared for us. While we wait for His guidance, we can continue to serve, love, and live faithfully, knowing that God is at work even in the silence. Finally, patience in waiting reminds us that God's answers are always worth the wait. There are moments when it feels like we are stuck in the unknown, but in those moments, God is preparing us for something greater. The answers we receive from God, when they come, will be filled with wisdom, peace, and purpose. We may not understand everything now, but in time, God's guidance will become clear, and we will see that His timing and plans were perfect all along. In uncertain times, patience in waiting allows us to trust that God is in control. As we wait, we grow in our dependence on Him, deepen our trust, and develop endurance for the journey ahead. Let us remember that God's timing is perfect and He is always at work, even in the waiting. Our faith in Him is strengthened in these moments, and His guidance will come in the right time, leading us to the place where He wants us to be. One of the most profound aspects of seeking God's guidance in uncertain times is the peace that accompanies His direction. In a world that is filled with confusion, anxiety, and the unknown, peace can often seem elusive. We may feel overwhelmed by the weight of our decisions, uncertain about the future, and unsure of the next step. However, when we turn to God for guidance, we are not only seeking wisdom and direction, but also the peace that comes from knowing that we are aligned with His will. The peace that God provides is not like the temporary peace the world offers. The world's peace is often based on circumstances. When everything is going well, when our situation is secure, and when our desires are met, we may feel a sense of peace. But this peace is fragile and can quickly fade when things change or challenges arise. God's peace, on the other hand, transcends circumstances. It is a deep, lasting peace that comes from the assurance that God is in control and that we are safe in His hands. This peace is not dependent on external factors, but on the unshakable truth that God is sovereign and faithful. When we seek God's guidance, one of the first things we experience is the peace that comes from knowing He is with us. In times of uncertainty, we often feel alone, as if we are facing the unknown by ourselves. But the truth is, God is always with us, guiding us, comforting us, and offering us His peace. In Philippians 4:6-7, the Apostle Paul encourages us not to be anxious, but to bring our concerns to God in prayer. He promises that when we do, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This peace is not something we can produce on our own. It is a gift from God that guards us from anxiety and fear. One of the key elements of God's peace is that it gives us a sense of security in the midst of uncertainty. When we are uncertain about the future or unsure of the decisions we need to make, God's peace reminds us that we are navigating life's challenges on our own. He is with us every step of the way. His guidance brings clarity and confidence, helping us to move forward with assurance even when we cannot see the full picture. This peace allows us to rest in the knowledge that God's plan for our lives is good, even if we do not understand all the details. Additionally, the peace that God provides helps us to remain calm and steady in the face of challenges. In uncertain times, it can be easy to become anxious or fearful, but God's peace acts as an anchor, stabilizing our hearts and minds. It is a peace that calms the storms within us, allowing us to make decisions without being ruled by fear or doubt. This peace enables us to stay focused on what God has called us to do, rather than being distracted by the chaos around us. It provides the clarity and strength we need to move forward, even when the path ahead seems unclear. Another powerful aspect of God's peace is that it helps us to discern His guidance more clearly. When our hearts are filled with anxiety, fear, or uncertainty, it can be difficult to hear God's voice or understand His direction. But when we experience His peace, we create space in our hearts to listen to Him. His peace calms the noise and distractions of the world, allowing us to hear His still small voice more clearly. It is in this peace that we find the ability to discern His will and receive the guidance we need. God's peace acts as a filter, helping us to distinguish His voice from all the other voices and influences in our lives. Furthermore, God's peace is a testimony to others. In a world that is often marked by fear, anxiety, and stress, the peace of God stands out. When we experience His peace in the midst of uncertainty, it becomes a witness to those around us of the strength and assurance that comes from trusting in God. People may wonder how we can remain calm in the face of adversity, and it is in these moments that we have the opportunity to share the source of our peace, God Himself. This peace is not a product of our own strength or efforts. It is a gift from God that flows from our relationship with Him. As we trust in His guidance, His peace becomes a testimony of His faithfulness to those around us. Experiencing God's peace also deepens our trust in Him. The more we experience His peace in uncertain times, the more we are able to trust Him in the future. Each time we encounter His peace in the midst of uncertainty, our faith is strengthened, and we are reminded that God is always with us. His peace reassures us that He is in control, that He is leading us, and that He will provide for us. It builds our confidence in his ability to guide us through any challenge, no matter how uncertain the path may seem. This peace is not a temporary feeling that fades once the situation improves. It is a lasting, enduring peace that continues to sustain us through every season of life. It is the kind of peace that allows us to rest in God's promises, knowing that he is always working for our good, even in the most uncertain of circumstances. It is a peace that gives us the strength to persevere, the courage to move forward, and the assurance that we are never alone. In uncertain times, God's peace is the anchor we need to navigate through the storms of life. It is the assurance that God is with us, that he is guiding us, and that his plans for our lives are good. This peace transcends understanding, and it guards our hearts and minds as we trust in God's guidance. When we seek God's direction, we not only receive his wisdom, but we also receive the peace that allows us to move forward with confidence, clarity, and strength. This peace is a gift, and it is available to all who trust in him. In conclusion, navigating uncertain times is a challenge we all face, but it is also an opportunity to deepen our relationship with God and trust in his guidance. As we seek his wisdom, rely on his patience, and embrace his peace, we find the strength and direction needed to move forward, even in the midst of confusion and fear. God's guidance is available to us at all times through prayer, through his word, and through the stillness of his presence. When we turn to him, he promises to lead us, to comfort us, and to provide us with the peace that transcends understanding. Remember, no matter how uncertain the road may seem, you are never alone. God is with you every step of the way, and his plans for your life are filled with hope and purpose. So take courage in his wisdom, trust in his timing, and know that peace is yours as you walk in his will. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on these truths. And I pray that as you seek God's guidance, you experience his peace and direction in every area of your life. May you be encouraged, strengthened, and empowered to face whatever comes your way. Good luck on your journey, and may God bless you abundantly.